Good morning, Las Vegas. It's Zandra Pollard with It's Where I Am. Today, we're going to play part 1 of the Women Empowerment Conference 2022. There was so much support for this conference. We had donations from all over the United States, and I just want to thank you for your contribution in helping to make this conference the best. We also had one traveler who came all the way from Maine just to attend. Wow, if that's not empowerment, I don't know what is. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone who was a part of making Women Empowerment 22 such a success.
Here, it's where I am. I'm Zandra Pollard, and I'll be hosting today's Women Empowerment 2022. We have some very special guests here today. We have Ogee Musa. She is a film director, writer, and she will be presenting her short film, Mateo and Cliff. We also have Louisa Eiler. Louisa Eiler is a professor, television producer. She wears many hats, and I thank her for being here. She'll share with us some of the things she's doing in film and television. And so we're going to start with Ogee. Cool. So this Women Empowerment Conference is super important because we are, working through this pandemic, right? And we're realizing that we're having serious issues with mental health. We're at a point where we're understanding that we need more help than we thought we ever thought we did, right? So you did your film back in 2017. You did one called Friction. Is that correct, the year?
Yes.
So you did a film called Friction, which was a sci-fi film, and it won some awards. But this one in particular, Mateo and Cliff, I wanted to showcase today because Ogee has won awards for it as well, but it deals with something that's very close and personal to me, which is mental health. So can you give us a synopsis of your film?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a short film that features a Black houseless man based in LA, and basically he's going through mental health issues while he's trying to fit in kind of a senseless society. So we kind of see his story, how he got there, and just kind of, there's a twist at the end that you'll see momentarily. And it really is just a reflection of what's going on. I always really believe that as an artist and as a filmmaker, Nina Simone said that it's an artist's duty to reflect the times. So most of my work, which I call conscious storytelling, does just that. So based in LA, living in LA for the past 5 years, it was definitely a marginalized voice that I wanted to uplift, just to kind of bring awareness to the issue, as well as try to find some change and potential solutions to sustainable communities for people who are unhoused. Yeah.
Thank you. So we will start with the presentation of Mateo and Cliff. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful creative film. Ogee, what inspired you to do this film? And how did you manage writing, directing, editing? You did all of this. This was your passion project. Why?
That's a great question. I think that we can ask that question for a lot of things that we do, right? And I think highlighting such an important light on a group that gets ignored is just a reflection of us in general as humans. I'm sure that we've all felt that at some point, not having a voice or not being seen. So in a way, this community is like the heightened example of that, because it's like abandonment. There has been issues with just like being pushed out of the light of being human. Homeless is less than a human. So in a way, it's a matter of being able to take care of yourself by seeing yourself in others. So with conscious storytelling, it's all about really evoking empathy. So what I want to do as a filmmaker is make you kind of realize it could be you, because we are all the same, right?
I think most Americans are one paycheck away from being on the street anyway, right?
Right. And in the beginning, there was some audio actually of, that there was, when we didn't hear the audio, there was some interviews of people just saying that same thing, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was good. You're right there in sync. But basically, this project, I mean, it started with, like I said, I like to reflect the times in my work, and I lived in Hollywood. It's like West Hollywood, Hollywood borderline. And I'm always kind of giving to my community. So I lived within that community basically, and I would care for and just donate food and hear their stories. So I started to just listen and have conversations, because I think that's the most important thing, is really just listening to each other. And I think that's what we have kind of forgotten to do, is just listen, you know, and just pay attention. So I started doing just that, just listening and paying attention. And the project was kind of birthed out of a couple of different ideas. It really just came together. But I think one very important thing is that there were so many times that it was not supposed to be made. There's so many moments where production almost stopped, that it didn't start. People dropped, actors dropped. So there was a lot of restrictions with this one. This was the hardest one yet, because this is my second film, but I also have a documentary in post-production. Okay. And this film caused a lot of just problems. But I had to finish it. I felt like I was called to tell the story. I felt like I had to. There was no option.
So did you start as a filmmaker, or did you start like maybe you were a camera person first?
Right.
And you said, hey, I want to be a filmmaker.
Right.
So
I actually started with med. I was a biochemistry major as a freshman at BC. So I started on a whole completely different path. And I always say that my parents and society was kind of painting this portrait of me that I was just trying to live up to. You know, I was trying to, okay, that's my picture, that's who I have to be. I was really living up to these labels that were attached to me. Don't get me wrong, I love science. Still do, you know, I incorporate that with like what I believe with spirituality and science. It's all still intertwined. But I definitely was on a completely different path, but I always wrote. I was always a writer. So when I direct, produce, writing was always just what I did, like since I was young. And I actually didn't talk for the first couple of years of my life, but I wrote. I was always writing, so I have a vast imagination. And when I left school and I took a year off of college, that's when I wrote, produced, and directed my first feature film.
okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, Ogee has been on the show It's Where I Am. You can find it at itswhereiam.com. itswhereiam.com. Now I'd like to get with Miss Louisa Eiler, who has previously been on the last two shows of mine. She is a transformation expert, and she's also a professor. She wears many hats, and she's also in television. And so I wanted this first segment to start with what women are doing in film and television to make a difference with mental health. We always see the negative, you know, portrayed in movies and film, but there's women out there that are doing positive things and making conversation more normal around mental health. So Louisa, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. So, again, my name is Louisa. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm one of 8 kids. My parents were 10th grade dropouts, and when I went out into the world, my parents forbade me from going to college. They wanted me to start working, and they would not even sign the forms for my partial scholarship to Stanford. So that being said, I set out to find my own way in the world, and eventually, along that journey, I was a victim of many life circumstances. I was raped. I was beaten by the father of my son. Lived in a shelter for a while, and I was bankrupt, then I was homeless for a while, and eventually, as I kind of worked it all out, I kind of built myself up from the ashes. And at first I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and so I was putting myself through school, nobody was paying for it, and then after the domestic violence incident, I ended up in a battered women's shelter with my 2-month-old son, and it changed my life forever, because in that time, I learned that, sometimes women didn't have a quarter to make a call, but in that same shelter, there were women who were the wives of the partners of very sophisticated elite members of society, and in that room, it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, or white or black, there were women who needed women, and so from that moment forward, women's empowerment kind of took on a new shape. And when I got out of that shelter, I called one of my professors from undergrad and I said, I need to be a social worker because the woman who changed my life was a social worker. And I wanted to figure out how to help other women in that capacity. So I got into grad school, got a great job as a graduate assistant because of the help of my professor at the Office for Sexual Health Awareness and Rape Education. And through that job, I sort of healed my own life by healing others and learning the right processes and having expert mentors teaching me what it's like to respond as a helper to a victim and becoming a victim's advocate, and through sharing the pain of other women and having talked the talk and walked the walk and been that, learned how to really conceptualize that and be a different kind of therapist. Sometimes people want a therapist that's going to listen to your problems and let you cry on their shoulder for as many sessions as you're willing to pay the money, but I'm very action oriented, and if someone wants to come and talk about their problems for the next 5 years, I'm happy to connect them to any of my colleagues who will just allow that. I'm very much that you don't get satisfaction in your life until you create some actionable steps to get there, because you can stay in the quicksand or you can learn to swim. And so that being said, I'm also all in, once you learn how to swim, you know that you can go in deep water and you know when it's time to get out and you know when you need a life jacket. So I've sort of come to live my life that way, living on the edge a little bit, but knowing when it's time to, go to shore and get anchored. And so along the way, just always seized every opportunity. And the person you see sitting in front of you today wasn't always this person all put together. For most of my adult life, I was 300 pounds. And about 5 years ago, I said, that's it. It's time to put me first. And so I set out on this embarkation of self-transformation, saying that I needed to put my money where my mouth was. And how could I sit in that chair and be a therapist to others when I hadn't put myself first and I hadn't taken my own advice? And so when COVID hit, a lot of my celebrity clients, were calling and saying, "Hey, Louisa, I'm really anxious. Can you help me? Can we do some live Instagram feeds?" And it's funny, the picture there that's on the screen. When I was on that Steve Harvey show, that was in 2017. I've been on many times, and the last episode that I was on, I looked at myself and I said, "I'm as big as Steve Harvey." 2 days later, I scheduled myself for a gastric sleeve. I had done the pre-work, but I was afraid to get under the knife. I had taken the courses for years. I kept saying, "I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to do it this time." Anyway, I did it. Moved forward, and my life started to change in remarkable ways. I think the next picture shows, that was me for most of my life. And then the next picture shows me getting to be half my size, and that span of time there is only about 15 months. And so being able to share that with women. And then one of the things that I like to do is the next slide is I tell people, you've got to pick a pace car. And although when I was 300 pounds, looking like Jello in the corner didn't seem like much of a possibility, but lo and behold, over the years, slowly but surely, if you take little tiny actionable steps, you can change your life, and all that's without any exercise. The only thing I did during that weight loss time this time was walk, and I just learned what I eat differently in my mouth. But I feel like I have this special calling because when COVID started and some of my people who had lots of followers wanted to share live streams of me coaching them through this anxious period or sharing their pain with others, it led different people to contact me, and at the first part of COVID, I created a 9-episode weekly mini-series called Words of Wisdom with Tamara Simmons, the executive producer, surrounding our Kelly and Chana Nelson, a human slave and trafficking expert. And I interviewed 5 different people each week for 9 weeks. So I interviewed a total of 54 guests, from Dr. Ish to Judge Toller to, Mandel Frazier, Kara Bernards, Candace Rice. Lots of people came on to talk about mental health, and I had to really focus on the African American community because I was seeing my son is biracial and how as a young adult he was suffering, and I taught at that time in inner city colleges, and I was seeing how my students were suffering, and I wanted to be able to give messages that everyone could take something from. And that led me to then, in the second half of COVID, Dr. Ish from Marriage Boot Camp, now he's on the man panel of Nick Cannon, and Judge Lynn from Divorce Court, and then another therapist, Alyssa, who's kind of a Zen healer. We created another 9-week series on Facebook Watch called Life, Love, and Lessons, and that we're hoping to take that to TV pretty soon, but it simulates 8 weeks of therapy. So if you start at episode 1, it's actually a model, and we're talking on Zoom, but in a virtual panel. And there's episodes available at lifeloveandlessons.com. And if you watch those 9 episodes, it's really like you've gone to 8 sessions of therapy. And so it's designed to be talk therapy made for TV. Because I think too many times people, they only say what they think is going to get likes, or they say things that they think people are gonna, react to in a way. But I think that at the end of the day, you've got to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and you have to be able to reach people where they are. A lot of people won't even feel unscripted interviews, and a lot of people, sound like you feel one instead. But I think when you come from a place that's authentic, and when I now see the women that I've worked with or students that I've had over the years, and they're so proud of their jobs and they're so proud of themselves and the things that they've overcome, it's just a miraculous testimony. And, probably of all the jobs that I've had teaching GED classes to underprivileged and underserved communities change because you decided to pause and share yourself.
So you said something that stuck out to me is meeting the person where they are, which is why I named the show It's Where I Am. Because I'm not always happy, Sometimes I get sad. Sometimes I'm angry, and you will know it, right? So that's why it's about meeting the person where they are. And so I appreciate you saying that. So listening to your story, both of you, I'm understanding that it was a social interaction that made you move forward in your journey. So like, you did it on your own, but first what happened was you met a counselor at the homeless shelter, right? And that was one of the reasons why you decided to do what you're doing. So you never know who you will come in contact with that can change your life. I know for me, getting into media, I started out with no voice. I had a surgery, a procedure done that left me paralyzed on each side of my vocal cords. And I used to talk like this. And I would get very angry because I wasn't able to express myself and people couldn't hear me. And somehow I got to an outlet that gave me a chance to talk to people all over the world. It starts here in Las Vegas, but there are other things that I participate in that allows my voice to shine in other places. So, therapy is a wonderful thing. I know today we were getting our hair done, we were getting our makeup done, right? We were putting on that shield of armor like you said earlier. We wanted to look good. But then what's going on inside, right? That's a part of self-care that we're not focusing on. And so again, what I do is about normalizing the conversation and understanding that it's okay to get therapy. Sometimes we have anxiety. I would have never said that 3 years ago, never. I didn't really understand what it was, but when I understood what anxiety is, and I was feeling it, it was like, okay, something's going on, let me take care of it, right? So I just wanted to say that, thank you again. Don't go anywhere, because one of our guests, Shatana Nelson, who I was so excited to have today, had a personal issue that she had to take care of, and we're sending our love and prayers to her. But Shatana Nelson works with Louisa, as she mentioned before, and Shatana works on the federal level with human and sex trafficking. They call it slavery and human trafficking, right? So she gives us an understanding of what that is, right? Before she came on my show, I did not realize what it all entailed, but she's gonna lay that out for us. And so since she couldn't be here, she put together a video, it's very short, just to give you an idea of what it is, how to pay attention to it, how to take care of our loved ones, okay? Alrighty. So that was Shatana Nelson. I thought it was very important to talk about this subject as well, because we want to address everything that we can, right? That shows how we have grown into power, right? We're empowered because we have grown into it, and that's what I believe. So I felt that Shatana's message was super importante, and thank you for sending that video over to us. So, does anyone in the audience have any questions for the panel? And if you have a question about sex trafficking or human trafficking, you can present those questions as well, and Louisa will be able to answer those. Sure. You can use the stand.
How's it going? I have a question in regards to your film, or just your film making or production, I guess. Have you been doing that all of your life for like the film production, or when did you like start? I guess, or get your foot in, like in the door, and then maybe what were some of the things that was kind of hard for you starting? What maybe caused you to want to stop, but allowed you to, but you still persevered through it.
Yeah, great question. So how did I start? My first love is acting. That's my first love. So that actually was like my childhood dreams. When I would be studying for science, I would just also like sneak away and do improv club. And when I tore my ACL, my MCL in high school, I ended up like doing theater during the recovery. So it just like fed that inner love. So initially, when I did take that year off of school, I auditioned for this film. It's an independent movie called Theory of Conflict. And that's when my life changed. I was in Boston, and I actually just got really close with the director. He's Nigerian, I'm Nigerian born. And the DP, director of photography there, and he's one of my best friends, and he's a great mentor of mine. And both of them kind of just took me under my wing. And I ended up writing my scene because he was writing for like this teenage young girl, and I was like, this dialogue, come on. So I rewrote the scene, and they were pretty impressed by that, and wrote my dialogue, rewrote a few things. So that was kind of, I kind of put myself out there in that way, and the cinematographer saw that, and then we just collaborated from there. He invited me to a writer's table, and that ended up being my feature film of Friction. Yeah, so I really just went out there, was very confident in what I love to do, which was act and write. So I followed that first, and that's where it led me. And then the difficult things. I have definitely, the past couple of years, I've been challenged beyond comprehension with this film, with Taylor Cliff. And there are many times where I wanted to give up just because it was affecting my mental health, because I was doing so many hats. Doing so many roles. I didn't act, I dropped that. I was gonna act in this one, Macy character, but I dropped that because I was directing, writing, and producing, and I actually ended up editing it. So in the post-production stage, it was just like, I couldn't find, it's so hard to find people who can understand your vision. It's like, I wish I could just like implant my vision, and it's so hard. And finding the filmmakers and just finding people who understand you and your vision is very important, because I'm very avant-garde and green to an extent, because I'm independent. So I have like a guerrilla style of how I shoot and just how I am as a filmmaker. I'm fearless in a way, so I don't have the restrictions of the industry. So that's been a challenge. Because sometimes within the industry, you're put in a box, and they want you in a box. They want you to be one hat, because then they know how to promote you. Then they know how to sell you. So when you're wearing all these hats, like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm me. So sometimes that's really where I've had conflict, people not accepting me. And it's just, maybe there's a fear of, I don't know, I'm still working on that. And, I've had pretty good success with my projects, but I know that there's so much more to come. This is just the beginning. So as soon as people accept that I can wear all the hats and, just like roll with how I'm doing things, and I'm learning more technical stuff as well, just like being in LA, I'm just trying to like sneak into USC classes and just getting like the actual training, because I'm just like avant-garde. Yeah, I'm just guerrilla warfare kind of style with it. So, but that's me, and I'm doing what I can. My age affects things as well, and of course, me being a woman. I'm a Black woman filmmaker in the film industry, which is just heavily cis male, white. Like it's just like it's the industry of that. So that's been a huge thing. Imposter syndrome. Combating that, just being able to feel like you belong, even though the path was never paved for your feet. So it feels foreign, because it's like it was never for me. So that's been the utmost challenge. But I'm getting through, I got through.
Yeah, that's huge. So we've been talking about Friction and Mateo Cliff.
Yeah.
So what about, how do we find those films? Because we've mentioned Friction a few times.
Yeah.
How do we get to see it?
So you can see it at frictionmovie.com. And then also just follow me on social media. I have everything in my bio. Getch at me, GECHATME. So that's the first step. My name is my website, ogeechinusa.com. So there's a couple different ways you can find me. And I try to put everything
And
out
also
there.
Mateo and Cliff, right? So we can, So if you can't remember how to spell the name, if you haven't written it down, you can find her that way, okay? So we just want to make sure you're able to find all of her beautiful body of work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Jessica? Stand up, please. We're doing this old school overstep.
Hi. How do you combat imposter syndrome? Every room I walk into, everything I sign up for, every time I get an email telling me thank you for my work, I read it and I go, they don't know. They don't know that I'm not supposed to be here. They don't know that I didn't get that superpower from somewhere. They don't know that that's not real. How do you combat it? What steps do you take?
That's a great question.
Yeah, because I don't even know what it means. Imposter syndrome, what does that mean?
So it's basically when you feel as if you don't belong in an environment or a setting, just based off of just, in this case, like I said, with being a Black woman filmmaker, you sometimes feel as if, you're not supposed to be there. It's a weird, psychological effect that is just imposed on society based off of who was allowed in what room, And as women, we encounter that all the time. So many people, different people who are oppressed or marginalized will feel this, that they don't belong. And there's always that doubt. It's really doubt that really just takes control. And one thing that I have definitely worked on therapy, absolutely, doubt, anxiety, have battled with both of those low moments. I definitely have to work through that and finding it within. And it seems so simple to say, but I've had to just know my own inner power, and just find that confidence, because that's it. You are your only support. That's at the end of the day, it has to be coming from you. Because if it's not coming from you, they're not going to believe it. You know what I mean? You're going to be walking, that's how I feel it.
Clinically, imposter syndrome happens because it's like the back of your head. Between who am I versus who I think I am and who I trust and believe I am. So it's rooted in an internal battle between your self-esteem and your self-confidence, which we find in a lot of things. So some of the ways to combat that in the real world is that, everything that you do that becomes social proof and tangible assets. By tangible assets, I mean having a killer resume. By, really amplifying the things that you've done and not being ashamed to have things out there. Having a decent looking Instagram page helps with imposter syndrome. Having a website to back up her film. Because imagine if she just came here and she said, I have this great idea for a film about a homeless man. Having a great idea is one thing, but when you've taken the steps to actually make it real, every step you take to concretize something that you've got thought up in your head gives birth to a stronger version of who you are. And so at every pass along the way. And I think sometimes we become impregnated with our own ideas. And I tell people, if you've got an idea, birth it in 9 months or let it go. Because otherwise those things hold you back the rest of your life. When you've got an idea you've had since a little girl that's carrying, you need to get rid of that. Or you need to birth it.
Powers in this room? Thank you. So we'll take one last question for these ladies, one each, and then I want to bring on our second panel of experts, okay? So one more for Ogee and one more for Louisa. Yes, ma'am. Say your name.
I'm Candace. I have a question for Lisa regarding trafficking. I'm not sure exactly how to ask this, but are there any resources for parents who suspect another parent who's grooming and for trafficking their child?
Oh, wow.
Well, the first thing you want to do is protect yourself as a witness to something like that, because sometimes there's just cycles of brains and people that, ultimately have misintentions, period. So one, you can start to document some of the things that you might be seeing. And then you can contact your local authorities to kind of produce an anonymous tip. A lot of it's going to depend on the age of the children, how they respond. Because if the children are under age 17, there's some characteristics, and if they're under age 14, it's different sets of characteristics. And then it's also what role that person plays in that person's life. Are they identified as a primary caretaker? What are their spheres of influence on the child? And also the humantraffickinghotline.org. There's certain steps that show you which agencies are responsible for each one, because depending on the age of that person, it's going to be criteria for child abuse, and that is going to involve a quicker response sometimes. But the most important thing is remove your subjectivity to, I think this is happening, start just documenting down the things that you say, so that when you get that opportunity to present that to the correct authorities, that it's not you being swept up in your emotions on the horrific nature of it all, that it's you're able to say, these are the facts, figure it out, and tell me what's happening. Because when you present facts to authorities, they have to respond with evidentiary or not sustaining their claim. So facts over feelings all the time.
And that's why I invited our Attorney General Ford here today. He did not make it. I wanted him to answer some of these questions because he is on our website, right? When we look up human trafficking, crisis, how to get help, his name comes up, okay? So he wasn't able to make it. I know he wanted to be here, but this is something that I'm unable to answer for you. And this is something that Shatana, I'm sure she could tell us when she looks it up, but Shatana lives in Houston. Now, she works on the federal level, so I'm sure she has some information. But when I talked with her about it, it was like, yeah, what are we doing in Las Vegas? Find out what is happening here in Vegas, because although we're not at the top, we're up there, okay? So if there's one last question for Ogee, I'll take it now. Zanita, thank you.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for being here. I learned so much from both of you. I think what I heard overall is that there was a moment that each of you were able to have the spark and move through a difficult decision, and you create this wonderful film, and you make tremendous changes in your life, and I was inspired by that. Maybe one question I would have is, I really enjoyed the layers in your film and your storytelling. I'd like to find out, how long did it take you to develop that script? Did you get a lot of difficulty in trying to create those different layers, or did it just happen in post? I mean, I just really enjoyed the level of storytelling that you had to share.
Thank you.
Yeah, and watching it really, really touches my heart. I feel it.
I just have to say real quick, she took the microphone because this is my sister, okay?
Yeah, I think that, so like I said, my environment always affects my screenwriting. There was a few story by credits as well, so I worked with other people as well in the beginning stages. That definitely, I'm the sole writer of it, so when I sit down and write, I honestly don't know what happens. I think I'm a vessel. That's straight up. Like that line with Mateo, like the world is mine. I don't know where it comes from. It's kind of odd. Like that is just coming, it's just coming. You know, universe, God, what you want to call it. Like I'm a vessel. Because sometimes I'm writing and I'm like, oh, where did that come from? Like, okay.
Wait, so you don't want to like overthink it, so like free writing, just writing whatever's coming into mind and then going back and looking and editing.
Yeah, yeah, basically. And then the dialogue, it just comes, I remember a lot of conversations. I've met a lot of people and have a photographic memory as well. So sometimes I'm really just like, it's coming in that way. Because I remember what people say, I remember how people are. I love building character just because I've met so many people in my life. I love to travel too. So I think it really just naturally all comes. And I always love to show multiple perspectives of the same scene, of the same thing. Like that movie Crash or Babel, like those are heavy influences just because I love showing all these perspectives so you can see all these different points. So you can empathize with why someone will do this or why someone is like that, just because it's like you won't get to do that because you're living your life. So when you're watching it, I want you to live someone else's life, just to see through their eyes and to walk their path, because that's how you can empathize. So I always try to do that. I'm always just like, let me throw that character, and have them be similar in that way, so you can make that connection of both these two opposite characters still being the same is huge for me. because then you can see that it's just the human in us, you know, I'm you and you and me. So that's really what I try to do when I'm writing. But everything else is just coming through. And like I said, there's a couple other story by credits, but sitting down and writing it as the sole writer, that was huge for me. And just producing the script as well was it had to be made. You know, it was one of those, I'm like, look at this, like, this needs to be done, so. Yeah, so it's kind of a natural process, but in the beginning stages, a lot of different influences. And then just writing down, just sitting and writing. It took me about a month. It was weird because I turn to my art when I'm going through something. So I was going through some traumatic like anxiety from my corporate job. So I was like, I remember writing and I was like, I have not stopped for 11 hours. And it was kind of scary because I was just like, hey guys, I'm done. And they're like, what? So it was my therapy in a way. You know, it's how I was mad at someone, like, you don't even know what I'm going through. I'm going on my own stage. So it was kind of channeling that too. Yeah, lots of support too.
Yeah, and I just have to plug what she just said. That's like, I give her like all the applause for that, because what she did was produce the script of someone else's life, and she talks about how every time she wrote it out, she looked at it differently, could add another layer in editing. You all have that potential with your own life, and the world is your stage, and you are the actor. And when you start journaling and you write out the things that you've seen and witnessed in your own life, if you don't like it, read it again and write a new script for yourself. So the next time you're presented with the same situation, you can change one word and change your life.
So ladies, if you can let everyone know what your social media handles are again, so that they can find you.
Getch at me, GECHATME, and then ogechimusa.com. Everything else is from there. I have a production company called M5 Productions, so everything should be found on ogechimusa.com.
And Louisa?
You can just find me at Louisa Eiler on Instagram or louisaeiler.com. Some other things are coming soon, but I'm starting some women's empowerment weekly Wednesday classes, Power of Wow. So women of the world, so.
Love it, love it. And you guys know me, Zandra Pollard. It's where I am. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Zandra.